Hello, everyone, and welcome to Faith, Family, and Financial Prosperity Workshop. My name is Anne Gaitha, and I am the founder and CEO of Regal Africa. And Regal Africa was created in 2015, and it's all about creating wealth. And the reason we thought it best to start this workshop is really to show people that even in times of crisis right now, where we're all fearful about the future, we need to have faith about and know that God is going to be able to enable us to actually have financial prosperity, and it all depends on our family. So we start off with that. I would like to talk, get a verse from the Bible, Ecclesiastes 5:19, which says that wealth is a gift of God. So what it says is, moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possession and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy to his work, this is a gift of God. All right. So today we'll be talking about faith, family, and financial prosperity. And whenever we talk about faith, we are saying faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And we can see this in the Bible in Hebrews 11:1. So we don't know about the future, but we all have to have faith that whatever we hope for will happen in the future. And the key about family, which is the middle part that I believe is the core part of financial prosperity, is our family is the circle of strength founded on faith, joined in love, kept by God together forever. During when you're living or when you pass away, family will always be family. And in regards to financial prosperity is basically financial blessings from God. So if you have the faith and you work together with family, I do believe that you will all have financial prosperity. All right, give me a moment. I'm not too sure why it's not moving. All right, so today our agenda is basically what we are going to be talking about. What does God say about wealth? And so what does the word of God say about wealth? What is written in the Bible about wealth? And what does faith have to do with creating wealth? We'll also be talking about what does my family have to do with creating wealth, and how can I achieve financial prosperity that we all pray for and we all desire. All right, so when I talk to people about faith, family, and financial prosperity, I always say it starts with you, right? So what is your purpose? Because what your purpose is and what your assignment is where you will find that value. And if you've read The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren, it will actually tell you that when you have a purpose-driven life, when you actually know what God has called you to do, you're going to do it with passion, you're going to do it very deliberately, and you will always have to do what you need to do to achieve that which has been assigned to do. And for me personally, as Anne Gaitha, my passion is to help others by sharing financial knowledge. And because I believe this is my purpose and what I'm called to do, I believe that I need to do whatever I have to do the Great Commission in the marketplace. So my mission constantly is, how do I transform families? And that's why we're talking about faith, family, and financial prosperity today. And I'm always thinking about, how do I transform communities? Because if you're able to transform families, then you can transform communities. And then ultimately, it's how do you impact the nations? And Jesus Christ does tell us this about the Great Commission, that you need to go out there and do good work around the world. So I say, because I know my purpose, I know what my assignment is, I'm always working towards that, and that I believe is what's going to help me create wealth. And so my question for you today is, what is your purpose? What is your assignment, because whatever that is where your financial prosperity will happen. Now, for you to create wealth, it has to be very practical. So this workshop is really about how to use biblical principles to actually help you achieve wealth creation, right? And I always say that in order for you to create wealth, you really need to start with the wealth formula, which is basically the secrets of the wealthy. And it all goes back to three things. But before I talk about those three things, I really wanted to quote this, which is on 1 Corinthians 2:15, which says, your faith should not be in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. So I can talk to you, I can share with you, many wealth advisors will tell you about wealth, but I believe is that when you go to the Word of God and you read it, you will be able to actually see the wisdom that is in this book, and then you can actually use it in your life to create financial prosperity for you and your family. So in regards to the wealth formula, which is the secrets of the wealthy, the first thing is really about the wealth mindset. You have to think abundance. It's actually in the Bible where God talks about abundance, right? We as Christians, or we as believers, should not be thinking about lack. You always have to believe that there's enough of that. God will provide, and we can all be wealthy. And being wealthy just means you actually have to have financial net worth, positive and passive income generation, which just means you always have to own more than you owe. It's even in the Bible where God detests about debt. So you really need to be very careful about the kind of debt that you accumulate, but really focus on how do you accumulate assets. And as we go through the workshop, I will talk more about that. But the key here about having a wealthy mindset is to have a vision of abundance, have a vision of how your life you want it to be, and have faith that it will happen. And once you have the vision, and you believe that it will happen, then you start working towards that vision. And I believe God will then be able to give you that, the will of your life. The second thing that you need to do is wealth planning. And we'll be talking a little bit about the wealth book. So ensuring that you have a financial plan is critical, because you need to know where you are and where you want to be. God is a God of order, I always say, and God is a planner. So if you do not have a plan of your life, how do you know when you've actually achieved that which you want to achieve? So for you to be wealthy, you need to first have a wealthy mindset, then you need to have a wealth plan. And then the third thing is actually execution of your wealth plan, which is wealth accumulation. I always tell people that wealth is grown incrementally. So I'm not here going to tell you how to get rich in 6 months or in 3 months, but what we'll be talking about is really wealth. How do you grow it incrementally? And I also say for you to be able to grow wealth incrementally, you have to put aside a percentage of your income and profit every time you make money, and then you want to make compound interest do its magic. And I'll be showing you a little bit about that, and how just the little you have, once you put it aside, you will be able to generate a lot. And this is actually talked about in the Bible when you talk about working and planning and creating wealth. If you look at Proverbs 6:6-11, it really talks about the wisdom of the ant. The ant is such a small insect, and yet it knows the seasons of life. It knows when to accumulate, it knows when to store, and it knows when to use. So if you look at an ant, it's always busy because it knows that the season will change. The season from abundance to the desert season, which right now we're seeing, especially in times of COVID. He always knows that things will not always be plentiful, but for you to be wealthy, you need to always know what you need to do, and you always have to be diligent, you always have to be disciplined, and you always have to be acquiring and storing and growing, because there'll be a time when you cannot do that and you need to go back to your results. In fact, when you talk about the story of Joseph in Genesis 41, Joseph was in the Pharaoh's palace, and Pharaoh had this dream about, these 7 cows, and there were all these healthy cows, really good. And then you see a vision of the dream of 7 skinny cows, and yet the skinny cows ate the big and healthy fat cows. And he was really trying to understand what this dream was. And God talked to Joseph, and Joseph just basically told him what it was. And really what Joseph was brought to do in the Pharaoh's palace was really to prepare them for famine, right? So it was about there was going to be 7 years of prosperity and abundance and 7 years of famine. And the reason why this is important when you're talking about wealth is because you need to realize when you have surplus, you need to be able to do things with it. You're not supposed to spend all of it. You need to be able to keep that, use that, store that. So at the time when there is famine, then you have some results that you can be able to go back into. And that is why God is always talking about creating generational wealth, because you cannot spend everything that you create. That is not the right way to do it. And that is how poverty comes to a lot of people, because everything people make, they spend. So if one thing I really need you to remember is that for you to be wealthy, for you to have financial prosperity, you need to have a wealthy mindset. You have to have faith that it will happen. You need to have a plan for your wealth, and then you need to have wealth accumulation. You're constantly growing your wealth. And then I like this verse in the Bible in Matthew 21:22, and it says, and whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith. Again, if you look at this, the key here is prayer. So you're asking of the Lord. So if you ask of the Lord and you have faith, then you will receive. A lot of us don't ask. And when you ask, you have to be very specific in what you're asking for, right? You cannot say, I just want to be rich. I want to be wealthy. Again, what does that look like, right? So even when you're praying, I believe that you have to be very specific in your prayer, and that way you'll have faith that this is actually what's going to be happening, because you actually have set it down and you've actually said, this is what I am praying for. So when you're looking to have financial prosperity, you actually have to pray about it, and you have to have faith that it will happen. It will not most likely happen right away, but if you take the right steps, then you will get to that. And that's what I always talk about, the financial journey. It's a journey of faith, right? It's a journey of faith. We talked about faith earlier. You don't know what the future holds. You just have faith that it's going to happen. So this is a journey. And so for me, I will say financial prosperity equals financial freedom, because you'll know you are financially prosperous or you're wealthy when you're financially free, when you can be able to do whatever you want to do, right? And the only time you can be able to do whatever you want to do in this life is because you have accumulated that wealth that I talked earlier, which requires discipline. And so for you, when you're on this financial journey, when you're on this journey to create wealth, you actually have to have purpose, like we talked about. You actually have to have a plan, because then you're able to fulfill the mandate of God in your life. For me personally, the reason I'm able to do what I do is because I spent so many years working in corporate, so many years working around the world, and I got this knowledge and I made this money, and it reached a point when I believed I was ready to go out there and do God's work, which is what I'm doing right now, which is to help families, help communities, and eventually impact nations. And for people to understand, especially people in Africa, that we don't have to be poor. And I will be talking about how we can be able to help you and your family actually achieve financial prosperity. As a believer, I always say that we all have to tap into the wellness of abundance, which the Lord has promised us. It's been promised to us, so we know that we are going to achieve that. You have to actually tap into your God-given talents and impact the center of influence you have. I always say that your talents shine. People will tell you what it is that you're good at. So wherever your talents are is where your wealth will be found. And then you start impacting the center of influence, which starts with your family. Your family is the core unit, and then you grow to the community and eventually to nations. So that's why I always say family is very key, because if your family does not support you, yes, you can be financially prosperous, but it will be a lot more harder. And that's why I'm always talking just like you. If you want to have financial prosperity, you have to actually sit down with your family and I always say your immediate family, your extended family, and figure out how can we support each other on this journey of creating wealth. Because once you have a really great support system, then you can thrive. But doing it alone would be very hard. So you actually have to be very clear about your family. Some of your family members might not be agree with you or might not support you. That's fine. Then we look at other families, right? Family is not only blood, it's the community that you're in. And with that, I always say, trust God for what you want, as all things for good, because God says all things will work out for good for those who love the Lord.